framework called the JCPOA to control the nuclear activity of Iran. We signed it at the initiative of the United States. We signed it, both the United States and France. That is why we cannot say we should get rid of it like that. But it is true to say that this agreement may not address all concerns, and very important concerns. This is true. But we should not abandon it without having something substantial and more substantial instead. That's my position. That's why France will not leave the JCPOA, because we signed it. Your president and your country will have to take in the current days and weeks its own responsibilities regarding this issue. But what I want to do, and what we decided together with your president, is that we can work on a more comprehensive deal addressing all these concerns. That is why we have to work on this more comprehensive deal based, as discussed with President Trump yesterday, on 4 pillars. The substance of the existing agreement, especially if you decide to leave it. The post-2025 period, in order to be sure that we will never have any nuclear activity for Iran. The containment of the military influence of the Iranian regime in the region, and the monitoring of ballistic activity. I think these 4 pillars, the one I addressed in front of the General Assembly of the United Nations last September, are the one which cover the legitimate fears of the United States and our allies in the region. I think we have to start working now on these 4 pillars to build this new comprehensive deal, and to be sure that whatever the decision of the United States will be, we will not leave the floor to the absence of rule. We will not leave the floor to this conflict of powers in the Middle East. We will not fuel ourselves in increasing tensions and potential war. That's my position, and I think we can work together to build this comprehensive deal for the whole region, for our people, because I think it fairly addresses our concerns. That's my position. Thank you, President. And this containment, I mentioned in one of these pillars, is necessary in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Iraq, and also in Syria. Building a sustainable peace in a united and inclusive Syria requires, indeed, that all powers in the region respect the sovereignty of its people and the diversity of its communities. In Syria, we work very closely together. After prohibited weapons were used against the population by the regime of Bashar al-Assad 2 weeks ago, the United States and France, together with the United Kingdom, acted to destroy chemical facilities and to restore the credibility of the international community. This action was one of the best evidence of this strong multilateralism. And I want to pay special tribute for our soldiers because they did a very great job in this region and in this occasion. Beyond this action, we will together work for humanitarian solution on the short term, on the ground, and contribute actively to a lasting political solution to put an end to this tragic conflict. And I think one of the very important decisions we took together with President Trump was precisely to include Syria in this large framework for the overall region and to decide to work together on this political deal for Syria, for Syrian people, even after our war against ISIS. In the Sahel, where terrorist networks span a footprint as large as Europe, French and American soldiers are confronting the same enemy and risking their lives together. Here, I would like to pay special tribute to the American soldiers who fell this past fall in the region, and to their French comrades who lost their lives early this year in Mali. Better than anyone, I think, our troops know what the alliance and friendship between our country means. I believe facing all these challenges, all these fears, all this anger, our duty, our destiny is to work together and to build this new, strong multilateralism. Distinguished members of Congress, ladies and gentlemen, on April the 25th, 1960, General de Gaulle affirmed in this chamber that nothing was as important to France as the reason, the resolution, the friendship of the great people of the United States. 58 years later, to this very day, I come here to convey the warmest feelings of the French nation and to tell you that our people cherish the friendship of the American people with as much intensity as ever. The United States and the American people are an essential part of our confidence in the future, in democracy, in what women and men can accomplish in this world when we are driven by high ideals and an unbreakable trust in humanity and progress. Today, the call we hear is the call of history. This is a time of determination and courage. What we cherish is at stake. What we love is in danger. We have no choice but to prevail. And together, we shall prevail. Vive les États-Unis d'Amérique! Long live the friendship between France and the United States of America! Vive la République! Vive la France! Vive notre amitié! Merci. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's French President Emmanuel Macron, of course, addressing Congress today on this Wednesday, April 25th, met with, of course, resounding applause inside Congress. This is the same day, actually, this is the anniversary of the French General Charles de Gaulle making essentially the same speech to the joint session of Congress in 1960. So he is doing it on quite a historical day. We did break in to our stream. Unfortunately, we only showed a portion of this. We weren't able to show it in its entirety, but I have it all backed up on video. This is a live look right now, though, inside Congress. We'll let this video kind of play out, and then we're going to switch gears in just a second.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So there you have it, guys. French President Macron making his address to Congress today. This is his third final day to his visit to the U.S. It started with sort of a more private dinner in Mount Vernon, the old home of George Washington in Virginia. And then it got a little more formal, of course, with the fancy, lavish state dinner last night at the White House and his welcoming to the White House yesterday. So a lot of fanfare there, some speeches that we took in live, and then his ultimate address to Congress this morning. This all comes on quite a busy day on Capitol Hill, actually. Right now, there are just crowds and crowds outside of SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States. They are hearing their final case, their final argument of the year. They won't hear another one until October. And this one is on the mostly Muslim country travel ban that President Trump has been proposing. Lines formed early this Wednesday. People were waiting outside to rally and protest against this argument, against what may go down today in their case. Again, the final one that they'll hear until October. And right now, there are people still out there rallying, making speeches, rallying up the crowd to talk about this ban. The Trump administration asked the court to reverse the lower court ruling, striking down the ban. And the policy has been in effect since December. But this is the first time the justices are considering whether it violates the Constitution. So it's a big day there for the Supreme Court. Let's check into some of the rallies, some of the protests outside of SCOTUS that's happening right now.
Okay, our last speaker of the program needs no introduction. We're very excited and honored to have him here with us today. He was inside the courtroom, and we're excited to hear his observations. President Khan is a Pakistani-American, a Gold Star Father of the United States Army Captain Humayun Khan, who was killed in 2004 during the Iraq War. You've seen him in the media. You've seen him as a commentary from our political officials and our elected officials. Let's welcome President Khan.
I am so heartened to see all Americans new Americans especially. I have stopped saying the word immigrants. We are new Americans. Let's remember, whenever we use the word immigrants, we call them new Americans. Today, all of us standing here, the backdrop of this symbol of justice behind us, American symbol of fairness, of equal dignity behind us, it's affirmation that regardless of a demagogue in the White House, regardless of a Islamophobe in the White House, regardless of xenophobe in the White House, the rule of law of this blessed land, this blessed country prevails and will prevail and continue to prevail. I am so heartened with this gathering here and what took place a short while ago. Our case was very vigorously presented and we wait a positive outcome. But what has affirmed to all of us that no one, even the President of the United States, is above the law. We have challenged him, we will continue to challenge him as long as all Americans, including new Americans, are treated with equal dignity and equal fairness. So let's remain hopeful. This president and his administration remains legally challenged and deficient. You see the jeopardy that he finds himself. We had offered him, when he was a candidate, we had offered him a copy of the Constitution so he can read it and abide by the rule of law about the equal dignity and fairness to all. But he ignored our offer, and look where he is today. Him, including his family, and including those who surround him, who enable him, are subject to rule of law. We are heartened by the events. We are with this voice. I want all immigrant communities, all new American communities to be heartened that this nonsense of xenophobia, Islamophobia, keeping other communities, minorities afraid, will not last for too long. I will end my comments with one citation. United States Constitution's Article 2, Section 2 appoints the President as Commander-in-Chief of the United States. It is obligatory on Commander-in-Chief to keep us safe from enemy, foreign or domestic. He has not abided the oath of office that he has taken. He has violated the Constitution and the mandate of the Constitution, and we challenge him on that ground. Minority communities in this nation are concerned, are afraid, our small children are afraid, but I want all of us to be heartened that rule of law prevails, rule of law will prevail, and we will continue to remain standing, continue to remain strong. Thank you very much. God bless.
Let's give a round of applause to all of our speakers today. And of course, in true fashion, we have to end this rally with some chants. So we're going to do 2 chants. We're going to do 3 times each. The first one is no hate, no fear, everyone is welcome here. 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 And the a Muslim fan? No Muslim fan? Thank you all so much for coming out today. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and have a great rest of your day.
All right, guys, again, the Supreme Court's last argument this year will be over President Trump's travel ban. They're essentially going to decide whether the president can indefinitely keep people out of the country based on their nationality. And there's people right now, this is a live look outside of the Supreme Court, rallying and protesting against what they believe where there should be some reform in this travel ban. Mostly Muslim countries are what President Trump has listed as some of the countries that would be banned. And so this is a big one. A lot of people are watching this. All eyes are on this case this year. And yeah, that's what we're looking at today. So let's go over something else today, guys. This morning, we have a couple things coming in. President Macron of France just gave his address to Congress. We're going to replay some of that, but also, if you remember, the Congressional baseball game where the shooting happened just about 11 months ago, last summer in June, those same Republicans went back out on the field for the first time since that, and they were practicing this morning very early, around 6:30 a.m., and we have a little press conference that they had very early on the field talking about their memories from that day and what they think going forward. So we're going to play a little bit of that. Looks like this rally sort of rolling out. So let's switch it over to that moment this morning with Republicans who were practicing on the baseball field.
And started shooting. A gunman came over behind the third base fence and started shooting out on the field. He missed Congressman Trent Kelly of Mississippi, who was at third base, but he did hit Congressman Scalise, who was out at second. He hit several of our staffers, and Coach Roger Williams was injured when he was going to seek cover in the dugout. Luckily, nobody that was hit fatally. The gunman was shot by Capitol Hill security officers of Scalise and the Alexandria Police Department, and he died at the hospital. We're going to play the game again this year on June 14th, the anniversary of the practice last year at Nationals Park, and we hope this year, on behalf of the Republicans that are behind me, that the outcome of the game is more positive than it was last year. So Congressman Scalise had a medical procedure last week and cannot attend the practice, but he does have a prepared statement. I'm going to read that statement. I'm going to let Mr. Williams, our coach, speak, and then every member of the team and the staff that wishes to will make a brief statement, and then we will take questions. I will say this: I'm very proud of the team. I'm proud of the resiliency they exhibited last year. I'm proud of how they have responded. This is a game that's been going on over 100 years, and the money that we raise is all for charity. And last year we raised a little under $2 million. That's an unusual amount. The year before we raised about $700,000. So this is an important tradition, and we hope to keep it going. Let me read Mr. Scalise's statement, and then I'll turn it over to our coach. I'm really glad to see practice start up again for the Congressional baseball game for charity. It is so important that we continue to maintain this annual tradition. Most years we compete for starting positions and rekindle old relationships. This year's different. The whole country is watching with pride as we come together and prove that one act of madness will not deter the spirit of camaraderie and philanthropy that has made this such a strong tradition in Congress. Play ball, Steve Scalise. So with that, Roger Williams, and then anybody else.
Thank you, Joe, and I'll be brief, but it's really good to be out here. You know, baseball is a game in America that starts in the spring, and everybody has a chance to be a champion. Last year didn't count. You can tell the Democrats that. It didn't count. We won the year before. We're on a one-game winning streak, okay? But we even have more of our colleagues playing this year than last year, and it's good to have them out. It's exciting. But I think anybody would tell you it is somewhat strange for some of us to be back out here this morning. I'm glad we're here, and we're going to move forward. Yesterday's gone, tomorrow's right now, and we're going to get out there, play ball. We're going to win the game. I want to thank all my colleagues for being out here, being a part of this. This is a great game. This is part of history in Washington. We will continue to make it even better with the charities and the donations that we give. But it's exciting to be out here, exciting to be a part of the team with some of the greatest guys that I know. So I want to say play ball, and may God bless all of you. Thank you.
Hi, this is my first year out here. I'll tell you, the state of Maine, we
Tell them who you are.
Well, Bruce Poliquin from Maine. We perfected indoor baseball up in Maine at this time of year. So it is great to get outside. This is like July in Maine. I love it. But I'll tell you, those of you that are watching, you notice that the balls have to be hit within 3 or 4 feet of the players in order for them to have a chance to field it. That's going to change over the next few weeks. I guarantee you we're going to win this game on June 12th.
I'm Barry Loudermilk from Georgia, and this practice was extremely important to me personally. And I appreciate the fact that we came out rain or shine, because a lot of emotions when we left the field that day. But one of the things that stayed with me was we never got to finish the practice that we started. And that's why I wore the same uniform I was wearing on the field that day, because it was important to come out here and show the world that we're not going to be deterred from doing what we do and raising money for these children. And it's especially important to me today that see my colleagues out here. Of course, Steve Scalise couldn't be here because he's still recovering. To see Matt Micah and Zach Barth back on the field today, it's this is victory. This is victory for all of us, regardless of the outcome of the game last year. Let me close by saying this. Most of the people that you see up here today would not be here today if it wasn't for the Capitol Police, the Alexandria Police, and even the EMTs, the first responders that were here that was able to save Steve's life and Matt's life. And so we owe a debt of gratitude for the first responders that were here that day. Never forget them. That's why some of us are wearing the Capitol Police hat. God bless you, and let's play ball.
It's great to be back, you know, to come and change into your cleats in the dugout where a lot of us were piled in just a year ago. Jeff Flake, Arizona, 18th year. But to be in that dugout where there's still the marks of the bullet holes there, and is kind of a surreal experience. It's my first time back to the field. This was important. I hope the memories we all take from it are not just what happened that day here on the field, but what happened with the Democrats' practice, where they gathered in prayer, and the game the next day where everybody came together. And so that's what I hope to take with me.
Good morning. I'm Chuck Fleischman. I represent the great state of Tennessee in the People's House. Last year, I was on this field walking. I was standing right behind home plate at that fateful moment when the gunman opened fire. It's probably one of the worst days of my life. But I want to let you all know the people behind me are very special to me. When I came to Congress, I knew there'd be some surprises. Some were not so good. The Congressional baseball team was great. We have a special fraternity here, but I think what we stand for, regardless of the carnage that we saw here. We came through that as a ball club. We came through that as friends. We came through that as a nation. We came together as Americans. And as I've talked about this event all around the country, and to many of you all, I just want us to always focus on what's great about our country. We are truly the greatest country in the world. I believe baseball is the great American sport, and nothing's going to stop us. We're going to be unified. Republicans, Democrats, Americans, let's get out and play ball. Thank you, and God bless you.
Steve Pierce, New Mexico. Last year I was in the batting cage here, hitting to Trent Kelly. I was pulling everything and noticed the guy come up in the stand right outside the fence over here. As I walked to the first base dugout, the first shot rang out, and frankly, he was shooting point blank at Trent Kelly. The first shot hit a wire in the fence and deflected it. Trent, being a combat veteran, looked over to his right, shouted "shooter," and started arcing out behind the home plate. If it hadn't been for the Capitol Police, the shooter eventually made his way down here. He took up a position. If he could have gotten up in that stand or made it about 10 feet further, everyone in the dugout would have been at risk. So the Capitol Police just are the ones who really stopped great carnage from happening. Again, it's a very bipartisan thing. We come out and practice, the Republicans, the Democrats practice at their field, but the day of the game, it's just baseball, it's just America. And that's what this morning is about, just returning to who we are as a country. Come out, we'll have partisan differences, we'll have cultural differences, but when baseball is here, we're just going to be on the field playing to win. Thank you very much for being out here today.
Play ball.
Matt Micah, I'm one of the volunteer coaches. For everyone knows, I got shot twice, once in the chest, once in the arm. One of my paramedics is here, Fiona, and I know a lot of the other folks from Alexandria, and as some people mentioned, without Officer Griner and Bailey, we all would not be here. The Alexandria Police, the EMTs, all the U.S. Park Police, everyone that came together that day. One, this is really special. We're back here, we're playing baseball in the Sandlot. It's also the 25-year anniversary of the movie Sandlot, so it's interesting we're all out here. But more importantly, I think, as Roger said, we get to start over. Baseball's great. It's 0-0. We get to go where we are. We get to come back together. All these guys are my friends, all the coaches, the members, and it's just great to be out here. And thank you all for coming out and making this important. And just want to thank you and all these folks for sticking with me, and appreciate the time. So.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, we'll be happy to, take a few questions before we conclude. And we do think the mayor of Alexandria is going to be here shortly. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Barton, as you talk about, this is the first experience back on the field for many of the players here. Walk us through those emotions. As you walk around, you see where Scalise was shot. You remember specifically where you were spoken. Talk about the catharsis of being back out here.
Well, it is emotional. Obviously, the people that were shot feel very strongly about it. I had my two sons here, and I brought both of them back to the field that same week so that they could see that it's just a baseball field. The city of Alexandria uses this field almost every evening in the summer for Little League games and junior teenage, and I think maybe even some high school baseball. They're very proud of this field. They had a memorial service here within a week of the shooting. That's the shirt that I've got on, the T-shirt. Oh, the mayor has just shown up. And so it is important, I think, to show continuity, to show that our team is not intimidated. We're not going to practice here every day now. The Capitol Police have encouraged us to rotate around so that we don't have an automatic pattern. But this baseball field, I think it epitomizes what makes America great. This charity baseball game shows that the Congress is a part of that. All the players on both this team, the Republican team and the Democratic team, they don't get extra credit to do this. It doesn't help them move up the leadership ladder or get to be a chairman. They do it because they love the game and they want to put something back into the community. In this case, the D.C. area youth, the literacy groups, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Nationals Youth Foundation. So today is an emotional day, but it's also, as somebody pointed out, a rebirth, a renewal. We're a very strong country. The institution of the Congress, I think, epitomizes what's right about America. Everybody that's on this field as a player, they're not appointed by the governor of their states. They're not appointed by the president. They're elected by the people, and they represent America. And so I'm proud of the team, and I'm proud and privileged to be the manager this year, and I hope we have a good year. We have our mayor here, Allison Silberberg, and I think I literally got her out of bed this morning. So, Mayor, we'd let you have the podium.
Well, good morning, Congressman Barton and all the members of Congress who are here with us this morning. Let me just say, as the mayor of Alexandria, that we are very glad that you're here. You all are here for the to practice for the Congressional baseball game for charity, as you should. This field is very special to our city. So many generations have grown up playing here at Simpson Field, and you all have played here for decades, practicing, and we're glad to see you here. It is emotional, but it's the right thing to do. We took back the field in about a week after the shooting. It's important to be resilient. We can't let an act of violence define who we are. We're here to live our lives, to enjoy our time, to make a difference through a charity game, to practice for that, to serve in whatever way it means to serve in public service. And I'm so proud that y'all are here, and I hope to see you here often. And I know it's a little soggy this morning. I did assume, since it was pouring rain until 3 or 4 in the morning, that it would be postponed. But you all are a hearty bunch, so that's a good thing. Our thoughts continue to be with all those who were injured and who are recovering physically, but also emotionally. And so I look forward to seeing you here again and again. So thank you all very much.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. We encourage you to do individual interviews if you wish. The players will be available. And God bless you for being out here, and God bless America. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Pretty amazing stuff, guys. That was early this morning around 6:30 a.m. over on that same baseball field that the Congressional baseball practice happened last June. June 14th is when that shooting was, and it was quite a memorable day here in the newsroom as well. I'll never forget that coverage and just racing over there to get what was happening, and it was just a crazy summer day. Obviously, they're playing the official game this year on that same date, kind of in memory of that incident. Several lawmakers were injured, were wounded, as you heard. No one was killed besides the shooter in that event. A couple more of the lawmakers came up to our photojournalists who were at the scene this morning and had some personal comments. Listen in.
The last couple of years I've been wearing an Atlanta Braves uniform.
during the game. But the last practice, I decided to go ahead and throw on this uniform, which I don't know why. I just threw it on and came out to practice, which was probably the worst thing to wear, being a bright yellow uniform when somebody was trying to shoot at you. So, but it was important to me to come back and actually complete this practice. And of course, the pants I had on I couldn't wear because I still have Matt's blood on them from kneeling with him during the shooting. But other than that, this is kind of a feeling of completion.
And you said, you guys didn't finish the practice. Kind of finish the practice.
We got to finish the practice, and so I think it helps emotionally. I mean, a lot of us that was here, I was talking with Matt. Out there, I spent most of the time shooting with Matt. Thought he was going to die. It was, I think, until August of last year before I stopped having, flashbacks of it, and that's what a lot of guys have experienced. But coming back out to the field, I hope gives closure to some of that as well.
I hesitate to ask. Can you describe what these flashbacks like? What were these scenes?
Well, it's just reliving every moment from running from home plate out the gate. I went out the gate. I didn't go to the dugout. I went out the gate behind the shed over there and running, hearing the shots, seeing the bullets hit on both sides of me. The other is when I got around to the shed and I turned the corner, seeing Matt walking to the SUV, turning when he turned, his shirt and his pants were covered in blood and laying down. Of course, at that point, I knew I couldn't leave the field, so I turned and I ran toward Matt. I didn't realize that the shooter had moved behind home plate at that point, but it kind of put myself and Brian Kelly, who's not here today, another staffer, we stayed there behind the SUV through the shooting. So it's scenes such as that, seeing Matt laying there, just hearing the gunshots, reliving different portions of it. I mean, it's just something you go through when you do have a traumatic event like that.
And how do you feel? I'm sure you're not the only one who had those feelings and thoughts after that. I mean, how did you cope with this?
Well, the thing that helped coping is, we had no fatalities, and seeing these guys. I came out to the field the Monday after practice. I think one thing that helped is it was Father's Day weekend. When I got back home, my sons and I went fishing for the weekend. We were able to decompress a little bit, but coming back out to the field, being able to show my family the bullet holes in the dugout, the side of the shed I was beside was riddled with bullets, and I even heard one bullet go right by my ear. And so being there and seeing it kind of, sometimes you think, you start wondering, is this really a bad dream? But coming back out here and seeing the evidence, realizing, this was real. It's just reliving moments of that. And, especially this week, some of us have had some of that again, just because we know this is coming up. You're anticipating a lot more media attention. You're talking about it more. I think it's very healthy for us to do that as well.
And you're not wearing a Kennesaw State University baseball cap.
No, I'm not. This is the first time I've worn the cap. Many of us that were on the field that day, the Capitol Police gave us hats. I lost my hat that was here. It was actually an American Legion hat, and apparently the FBI still has it. They said they kept anything had a bullet hole or blood in it. I was actually wearing a batting helmet, so my hat was actually stuck into the fence over there, so I assume it got shot. I would like to have it back, though. But I thought it was appropriate to wear save this hat for this day. So, all right.
Good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, if I could have everyone's attention, I'm Congressman Joe Barton of Texas. As I said earlier, I'm the manager. This is my 32nd year to be involved with the baseball game. As everyone knows, last June 14th, about this time, a little after 7 o'clock, a gunman came over behind the third base fence and
all right, so that was just sort of on replay there of some of the lawmakers there who were talking about last year's shooting. I hope that you enjoyed that little bit. That was from earlier this morning, and I clipped it up because it was cool to kind of see them coming out and just getting closure from that day in June. But guys, over now to a live video that's coming out of Dallas. Maybe you've heard about the 2 police officers who were shot. One of them did die this morning. One is still in critical condition in Dallas after that Home Depot shooting. 2 police officers have been affected. Again, one dead, one still in critical condition, and they're now updating with some new details that have come out. This is live in Dallas.
Scott Painter is making remarkable recoveries. They are still in critical condition, but we are optimistic about what we're seeing with him right now. We want to thank Pres.Trump Hospital They have been wonderful at this time, and we thank you for all the support you have given us. We want to thank our community for all the support you've given us, everything that you continue to do for us, your support and your prayers. And we just ask that you will continue to keep us lifted as we continue to do the work in this city. Thank you, media, for your support during this time. And we just want to say thank you and keep us in your prayers.
Thank you.
So some really sad news there for the Dallas community. Again, the details here are that Officer Rogelio Santander has died this morning, Wednesday morning. 2 other people actually were shot, another officer and a loss prevention officer. Both of them remain in critical condition, but I believe they are improving according to reports. They were shot at a Home Depot, and we're just getting in some details. This is a live video right now. We're going to see what else becomes of this, but I also have a little video from earlier when one of the chiefs, I believe, updated the media on some of the new details that have come out of this. So let me just keep on this for now to see what we get, and then I'll bring you over to that video.
Yeah, it just ended. So yeah, I'll call them right now. Yeah, it's over.
Her family's here to support her, and she's a fighter. I know her from Northeast Division where I work. She's a hard charger, young officer. She's healthy. She's making great gains. The doctors here treating her are greatly surprised in the improvements that she's made in the last 24 hours. We just ask for continued prayers. It's going to be a very, very long road for her. And we are going to be by her side. The Dallas Police Association and Dallas Police Department are going to be by her side and by her family's side.
Is she able to communicate at all? I don't know what.
Through movements, yes.
And what is that communication like? Any sense of the message?
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to go in great detail, but she has gone through protocols from the physicians to show that she has cognitive skill and recognition. She's able to move parts of her arms and legs. So that is for taking the injury that she did. That's amazing, and I think it is wholeheartedly in her faith and in her support from her family.
Amanda, I know what you're asking of the community. What is the Blue family like today? What's on y'all's mind?
Well, you saw it yesterday. You saw dozens and dozens of officers here, sad, just waiting on what was going to happen, and then they found a suspect, and you saw those officers leave here, do their duty. They were professional. They did outstanding work. They took the suspect into custody without any type of injury, and he will stand trial for these crimes.
Can you give us a sense of the officer who passed? Who was he? How should he be remembered?
Rogelio was an amazing young man. He is what we want as a Dallas officer. He is what the citizens expect as a Dallas officer. His family obviously raised him right. They raised a good human being, not just a good officer, but an amazing human being. And the citizens of Dallas need to understand that he gave his life for them, and they need to be thought of and thanked. And as a community, as a department, we're going to do that.
What would you tell him? Yeah, if you could tell him one thing.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Dallas Police Department. Thank you for protecting the citizens of Dallas. And I'm going to let him know that we will take care of his family. They will for always and forever be a part of the Dallas Police Association and the Dallas Police Department.
Did he have children? Was he married?
No. Absolutely.
Can you say and spell your first name?
First name is Michael, Michael. Last name is Mata, Mata. And I'm president of the Dallas Police Association, and I'm a field sergeant at Northeast Division here where the officers work.
So you work with him closely?
Yes.
both of them or one of them more closely with you?
No, I worked deep nights, and they worked the third watch shift, but we crossed paths. Obviously, they're members of our association, so I've known them through that and at the academy.
So you know both of you can say you're really well, you're pretty well acquainted, or you know them both.
At Northeast, we're all know each other. We're a family. Absolutely.
Do you know the condition for the loss prevention officer?
Yes, I want to state that, his family is up there on the same floor, and he is doing exceptionally well also. We want to thank him because just like those officers, he risked his life too. He took bullets that maybe would have been pointed in the direction of our officers, and he took them. He's doing very well. He's still in serious condition, but he's improving and he's doing very good. And just as we're going to be there for the officers, the Dallas officers, we are also going to be there for Mr. Painter and his family.
Well, you said earlier he was critical. Are you saying he's officially now upgraded to serious?
No, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. What I'm saying is he
still has his injuries.
Absolutely, but he is doing very well as far as the level of status he was at.
If you had a message for the city right now, the surrounding area, North Texas, from the police department, tell me about what that would be.
I just want them to understand, the citizens need to understand that we are there to protect them. Whatever narrative they may see on social media or wherever they get it, that is not what officers are doing every day. What officers are doing 99% of the time is what happened right here. They're doing their job. They're protecting the public. They're doing the best that they can. Sometimes you can't prepare for every single situation. And just like this, things go bad. And when they go bad, they can go seriously bad. We just want them to know that we're forever going to be their protector, and we're going to be here protecting them for as long as they allow us.
All right, guys, so definitely some sad news for the Dallas community. Just to keep you updated, the 29-year-old suspect was taken into custody last night after a car chase. The three victims are two police officers, a man and a woman. The male officer, unfortunately, did succumb to his wounds this morning and died. The female is the officer in critical condition. And then there's one more, a loss prevention officer for the Home Depot store that was also caught up in this shooting. And that person is in critical condition as well. So we're going to keep you updated on that as we get any more details surrounding that unfortunate, very tragic event in Dallas. But meanwhile, let's go to some of the top stories of the day, some of the packages that we've been working on from here and across the nation. Of course, President Macron, French president, is here in town. He delivered an address to Congress that we have to show you as well coming up next. But here's a few of the stories leading with President Trump's visit with the Macrons, and what they've been up to in the area, and then some other top stories of the day. And then we're going to switch it over to that footage from inside Congress where he gave his address this morning. So we kind of went up into the stream when it was sort of more than halfway done. So I want to make sure we update you on that. All right, guys, we're going over to some of the top stories. Check it out.
With the French president today, but it was a domestic issue, the fate of his embattled nominee to run Veterans Affairs, Dr. Ronnie Jackson, that took center stage.
I said, what do you need it for? So he'll be it's totally his decision, but he'll be making a decision.
The president insisting he is unaware of the allegations threatening Jackson's confirmation, throwing his full support behind the White House physician, but also giving him an out.
What does he need it for? To be abused by a bunch of politicians that aren't thinking nicely about our country? I really don't think personally he should do it, but it's totally his. I would stand behind him, totally his decision.
On the centerpiece of their meeting, Iran policy, Presidents Trump and Macron diverged. Macron preferring President Trump to stay in the Iran nuclear deal. President Trump twice warning Iran not to restart its nuclear program, even if the U.S. pulls out.
They restart it, they're going to have big problems, bigger than they've ever had before. If Iran threatens us in any way, they will pay a price like few countries have ever paid.
President Trump is facing a May 12th deadline to either again waive sanctions against Iran or withdraw from the nuclear deal. But in talks today, a possible third way, a second deal to cover Iran's long-term nuclear goals, ballistic missiles, and destabilizing actions in the Middle East.
Nobody knows what I'm going to do on the 12th, but we'll see. But we'll see also if I do what some people expect, whether or not it will be possible to do a new deal with solid foundations, because this is a deal with decayed foundations. It's a bad deal.
It was the first official state visit of the Trump presidency, honoring a leader President Trump has grown very fond of.
I like him a lot.
The public displays of appreciation, downright affection, put Macron in a class by himself.
In fact, I'll get that little piece of dandruff off. Little piece. We have to make him perfect. He is perfect.
But for all the handshakes, air kisses, and arm grabs, there are some sharp differences. President Trump pushing to get U.S. troops out of Syria, Macron pushing to keep them in a while longer.
What we want to do now is to finish this war with our troops, and we want to fix on the long run the situation to have peace in this region. That's our duty, and it's not just with our troops, it's with our diplomats, our teams, our common work, and obviously with all the allies in the region and people involved.
We've pretty much finished with ISIS, and we're going to be making some big decisions in a very short period of time, but we're working very closely together with France and with the president.
On the other big piece of the foreign policy puzzle, President Trump today had downright laudatory words for North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un.
He really has been very open and I think very honorable from everything we're seeing.
That assessment of Kim Jong-un stands in sharp contrast to what the president has been saying about the North Korean leader since he got into the presidential race. But President Trump also made it clear today he expects nothing less from North Korea than complete dismantlement of its nuclear program. At the White House, John Roberts, Fox News.
And in some ways, this case goes beyond just the president's travel ban. There are real questions here about how the court defines presidential power and to what extent judges can take into account the president's campaign statements.
You gotta stay united.
The protests over President Trump's travel ban are one thing, but it will all come down to these 9 justices. The Supreme Court hearing arguments today over whether President Trump crossed a line when he largely banned entry to travelers from 7 countries, most of them Muslim-majority nations.
It undermines key elements of our Constitution. The idea that we don't discriminate on the basis of religion. There cannot be a religious test at the border. That is un-American, unconstitutional, and unlawful.
Opponents point to President Trump's statements about Muslims during the presidential campaign, arguing that his motivations matter. But proponents of the ban say this is about security, that most Muslims around the world are not affected, and that the president has wide powers over border policy.
The primary power of the federal government is to make sure that the nation is safe, and under the Constitution, the president has broad power to make sure that he can exclude citizens who pose a risk under the national security power.
But the court is by nature a little skittish about getting into these kinds of arguments.
In many ways, it's a political judgment, and historically, the court has been very reluctant to tread into areas where it could be viewed as making a political judgment that's properly confined to the executive.
Now, the court recognizes just how controversial this case is, and for the first time in about 3 years, they will release audio recordings of today's arguments. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
That is pretty interesting, and that is one of the top stories that we have today, guys, because those rallies, we had some of the live footage this morning of some of the people outside of SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, this morning, and we'll keep you updated if we hear more about what is happening with the vote, with that case that they're hearing. It'll be probably a multi-day process here, but more to come on that, if it will be overturned and said to be unconstitutional or not. We'll have to see. A couple more top stories of the day. Check out this one, also more about citizenship and the travel ban and the impact that it could have.
Travel ban, an executive order severely limiting travel from 7 countries, including 5 with Muslim majorities. Immigrant groups have been complaining for months that they're being unfairly targeted, claiming the ban is tearing families apart and keeping loved ones separated.
This is my real life. That's what I'm fighting for.
this country built them family.
The ACLU says they've received dozens of complaints from spouses unable to reconnect with their husbands or wives overseas, and an equal number from parents whose children were out of the country when the ban went into effect, and are now, they say, effectively stranded thousands of miles from home.
My kids, like in the age over there, they kidnapped them and they put them in the military. I'm not gonna put my kids in a risk.
But there's also been a more positive unintended consequence, a big uptick in legal immigrants applying for and being granted citizenship.
Once Trump got elected and he initiated the travel ban, I got very scared and I thought, now is the time to become a citizen.
Immigration advocates and critics are applauding the trend as a way to bring immigrant families out of the shadows.
I feel elated and I feel so happy to be a part of the country that I know and love.
Since President Trump took office, the number of people applying to be U.S. citizens increased by more than 40%, creating a backlog of nearly 250,000 applications at Citizenship and Immigration Services. In Washington, Griff Jenkins, Fox News.
What could happen to my business and to many small, independently owned businesses would be devastating.
Carolyn Joy of Joy Wine and Spirits, a local liquor store, says, wait a minute, you're telling me in just a few months the Safeway up the street will be allowed to sell full-strength beer? That's something that could bankrupt her.
Some of these stores are located right next door, and so how are you going to take away 30 or 50% of their sales and not have it affect them?
But to some degree, the debate over 3-2 beer has already passed. 2 years ago, lawmakers voted to get rid of 3-2 by 2019, allowing stores that sell the weak stuff now to automatically sell full-strength alcohol later. Well, now liquor stores want to restrict shelf space of alcohol sales at grocery stores. They want to limit alcohol sales at convenience and grocery stores to 20% of their bottom line, and make it so you must be 21 years or older to sell it. Carolyn says 21 is how old you have to be to sell in liquor stores now. It should apply to grocery stores, too.
When there is opportunity, a lot of times kids take advantage of those opportunities.
But tonight, grocery and convenience stores are saying, hold on a minute. They have the right to sell beer soon, and these restrictions would make it almost impossible. They often employ teenagers and don't sell a lot of food. Greer Bailey represents convenience stores statewide.
There's a lot of Shell stations, a lot of Conoco stations that just don't have the inside sales to meet that 20% food threshold.
But still, lawmakers of the Capitol say something must be done. Currently, full-strength alcohol isn't generally permitted 500 feet from a school. As of right now, this 7-Eleven near East High would be able to sell it January 1st.
Government is treating one business or one group of businesses one way and another group of businesses a different way.
It was just after 6:30 when a helicopter belonging to the Sixers owner carried Meek Mill to freedom after his court-ordered release from prison, with a huge crowd of fans jamming the streets in Chester to watch.
I'm so happy. Finally, justice has been served in the city of Philadelphia.
I'm glad to see him free. It's a beautiful day in Philadelphia.
Meek Mill was released under heavy security to hold back fans after 5 months behind bars here for violating his probation. The state Supreme Court ordered the judge who put him there to release him on unsecured bail. A few hours later, Meek Mill was free, and the fans were ecstatic.
Look at the crowd. Look at the supporters in the crowd.
Justice has been served.
Sky Fox hovered overhead as Meek Mill was flown to Penn's Landing after an in-flight clothing change. He headed for another waiting SUV and a ride to the Sixers Miami Heat playoff game at the Wells Fargo Center.
Freedom served.
The embattled rapper has been visited by politicians and celebrities while in prison, all criticizing his sentence, his conviction, and demanding his release. Comedian and actor Kevin Hart weighed in Tuesday after visiting Meek Mill.
In this jail, how good can it be? You know, when you're sitting in there once again for something you didn't do, it's frustrating.
Freedom for Meek Mill came quickly Tuesday, and he thanked supporters, saying he looked forward to fighting injustices for other inmates and resuming his career.
I'm sure he's going to fight for, the ones that are unfortunate in situations like this, that don't have the type of resources he has to get out.
Really, I'm telling you, it just should never happen to begin with.
Dave Stratweiser, Fox News.
We're super excited and happy.
The saying goes, what seems to us as bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
Antilles the rescue dog has definitely had his share of trials.
I'm so happy I can do my happy dance.
Antilles arrived at the Helen Woodward Animal Center on March 1st. A birth defect left his furry little legs extremely bowed. They could barely support his body weight. The vets at Helen Woodward medically monitored him and fitted him with special splints. Those splints were removed last month.
First 30 minutes that the news story went out nationally, we just started getting calls in from all over. So I know
Jessica Gerke of the Helen Woodward Animal Center says the Otsuka family sent in an application that stood out and even included a PowerPoint. Their daughter has some health challenges of her own, and the center knew Antilles and Cassidy would be a perfect match.
there were pictures of the sweet little girl Cassidy teaching her dog and teaching lessons. There were pictures of them sleeping with the dogs and the dogs on the couch with them and outside just enjoying their life. And that's the type of life we want to see Antilles have.
The family is grateful, saying Antilles is now part of their special family. A reminder, they say, that trials that don't break us make us stronger.
Everyone has their challenges, and my own daughter, she actually suffers from absence epilepsy, which is a very unique condition, and she's a little bit different, and she knows what it's like to be a little bit different, and because of that, I think that really drew her to Antilles too, because he is a little bit different.
Maria Arcega-Dunn, Fox 5 News.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and the distinct honor of presenting to you His Excellency Emmanuel Macron, the President of the French Republic.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Vice President, honorable members of the United States Congress, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for France, for the French people, and for me to be received in this sanctuary of democracy, where so much of the history of the United States has been written. We are surrounded today with images, portraits, and symbols, which remind us that France has participated with heart in hand in the story of this great nation from the very beginning. We have fought shoulder to shoulder many battles, starting with those that gave birth to the United States of America. Since then, we have shared a common vision for humanity. Our two nations are rooted in the same soil, grounded in the same ideals of the American and French revolutions. We have worked together for the universal ideals of liberty, tolerance, and equal rights. And yet, this is also about our human, gutsy, personal bonds throughout history. In 1778, the French philosopher Voltaire and Benjamin Franklin met in Paris. John Adams tells the story that after they had shaken hands, they embraced each other by hugging one another in their arms and kissing each other's cheeks. It can remind you something. And this morning, I stand under the protective gaze of Lafayette, right behind me. As a brave young man, he fought alongside George Washington and forged a tight relationship fueled by respect and affection. Lafayette used to call himself a son of the United States. And in 1792, George Washington became a son of America and France when our First Republic awarded citizenship to him. Here we stand in your beautiful capital city, whose plans were conceived by a French architect, Charles L'Enfant. The miracle of the relationship between the United States and France is that we have never lost this special bond deeply rooted not only in our history, but also in our flesh. This is why I invited President Donald Trump for the first Bastille Day parade of my presidency on the 14th of July last year. Today, President Trump's decision to offer France his first state visit to Washington has a particular resonance because it represents the continuity of our shared history in a troubled world. And let me thank your President and the First Lady for this wonderful invitation to my wife and myself. I am also very grateful, and I would like also to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for welcoming me on this occasion. And I would like to especially thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your invitation. I want you to know how much I appreciate this unique gesture. Thank you, sir. The strength of our bonds is the source of our shared ideals. This is what united us in the struggle against imperialism during the First World War. Then, in the fight against Nazism during the Second World War. This is what united us again during the era of the Stalinist threat, and now we lean on that strength to fight against terrorist groups. Let us, for a moment, transport ourselves to the past. Imagine, this is July the 4th, 1916. Back then, the United States had not entered World War I. And yet, a young American poet enlisted in the ranks of our foreign legion because he loved France and he loved the cause of freedom. This young American would fight and die on Independence Day at Bellois-en-Santerre, not far from Amiens, my hometown, after having written these words, "I have a rendezvous with death." The name of this young American was Alan Seeger. A statue stands in his honor in Paris. Since 1776, we, the American and French people, have had a rendezvous with freedom. And with it comes sacrifices. That is why we are very honored by the presence today of Robert Jackson Ewald, a World War II veteran. Robert Jackson Ewald took part in the D-Day landing. He fought for our freedom 74 years ago. Sir, on behalf of France, thank you. I bow to your courage and your devotion. In recent years, our nations have suffered wrenching losses simply because of our values and our taste for freedom. Because these values are the very ones those terrorists precisely hate. Tragically, on September the 11th, 2001, many Americans had an unexpected rendezvous with death. Over the last 5 years, my country and Europe also experienced terrible terrorist attacks. And we shall never forget these innocent victims, nor the incredible resilience of our people in the aftermath. It is a horrific price to pay for freedom, for democracy. That is why we stand together in Syria and in the Sahel today to fight together against these terrorist groups who seek to destroy everything for which we stand. We have encountered countless rendezvous with death because we have this constant attachment to freedom and democracy. As emblazoned on the flags of the French revolutionaries, vivre libre ou mourir, live free or die. Thankfully, freedom is also the source of all that is worth living for. Freedom is a call to think and to love. It is a call to our will. That is why, in times of peace, France and the United States were able to forge unbreakable bonds from the grist of painful memories. The most indestructible, the most powerful, the most definitive knot between us is the one that ties the true purpose of our people to advance. As Abraham Lincoln said, the unfinished business of democracy. Indeed, our two societies have stood up to advance the human rights for all. They have engaged in a continual dialogue to unpack this unfinished business. In this Capitol Rotunda, the bust of Martin Luther King, assassinated 50 years ago, reminds us of the inspiration of African-American leaders, artists, writers, who have become part of our common heritage. We celebrate among them James Baldwin and Richard Wright, whom France hosted on our soil. We have shared the history of civil rights. Frances Simone de Beauvoir became a respected figure in the movement for gender equality in America in the 70s. Women's rights have long been a fundamental driver for our societies on both sides of the Atlantic. This explains why the Me Too movement has recently had such a deep resonance in France. Democracy is made of day-to-day conversation and mutual understanding between citizens. It is easier and deeper when we have the ability to speak each other's language. The heart of Francophonie also beats here in the United States, from New Orleans to Seattle. I want this heart to beat even harder in American schools all across the country. Democracy relies also on the faculty of freely describing the present and the capacity to invent the future. This is what culture brings. Thousands of examples come to mind when we think of the exchanges between our cultures across the centuries. From Thomas Jefferson, who was ambassador to France and built his house in Monticello, based on the building he loved in Paris, to Hemingway's novel Movable Feast, celebrating the capital city of France, from our great 19th century French writer Chateaubriand, bringing to the French people the dream of Americans' open spaces, forests, and mountains, to Faulkner's novels crafted in the Deep South, but first read in France, where they quickly gained literary praise. From jazz coming from Louisiana and the blues from Mississippi, finding in France an enthusiastic public, to the American fascination for Impressionists and the French modern and contemporary art. These exchanges are vibrant in so many fields, from cinema to fashion, from design to high cuisine, from sports to visual arts. Medicine and scientific research, as well as business and innovation, are also a significant part of our shared journey. The United States is France's first scientific partner. Our economic ties create hundreds of thousands of jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. The story of France and the United States is a story of an endless dialogue, made of common dreams, of a common struggle for dignity and progress. It is the best achievement of our democratic principles and values. This is this very special relationship. This is us. But we must remember the warning of President Theodore Roosevelt. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, handed on for them to do the same. This is an urgent reminder indeed, because now, going beyond our bilateral ties, beyond our very special relationship, Europe and the United States must face together the global challenges of this century. And we cannot take for granted our transatlantic history and bonds. At the core, our Western values themselves are at risk. We have to succeed facing these challenges, and we cannot succeed in forgetting our principles and our history. In fact, the 21st century has brought a series of new threats and new challenges that our ancestors might not ever have imagined. Our strongest beliefs are challenged by the rise of a yet unknown new world order. Our societies are concerned about the future of their children. All of us gathered here in this noble chamber, we, elected officials, all share the responsibility to demonstrate that democracy remains the best answer to the questions and doubts that arise today. Even if the foundations of our progress are disrupted, we must stand firmly and fight to make our principles prevail. But we bear another responsibility inherited from our collective history. Today, the international community needs to step up our game and build the 21st century world order based on the perennial principles we established together after World War II. The rule of law, the fundamental values on which we secured peace for 70 years, are now questioned by urgent issues that require our joint action. Together, with our international allies and partners, we are facing inequalities created by globalization, threats to the planet, our common good, attacks on democracy through the rise of illiberalism, and the destabilization of our international community by new powers and criminal states. All these risks aggrieve our citizens. both in the United States and in Europe, we are living in a time of anger and fear because of these current global threats. But these feelings do not build anything. You can play with fears and angers for a time, but they do not construct anything. Anger only freezes and weakens us. And as Franklin Delano Roosevelt said during his first inaugural speech, the only thing we have to fear, it is fear itself. Therefore, let me say we have two possible ways ahead. We can choose isolationism, withdrawal, and nationalism. This is an option. It can be tempting to us as a temporary remedy to our fears. But closing the door to the word will not stop the evolution of the word. It will not douse but inflame the fears of our citizens. We have to keep our eyes wide open to the new risks right in front of us. I'm convinced that if we decide to open our eyes wider, we will be stronger. We will overcome the dangers. We will not let the rampaging work of extreme nationalism shake a world full of hopes for greater prosperity. It is a critical moment. If we do not act with urgency as a global community, I am convinced that the international institutions, including the United Nations and NATO, will no longer be able to exercise a mandate and stabilizing influence. We would then inevitably and severely undermine the liberal order we built after World War II. Other powers, with a stronger strategy and ambition, will then fill the void we would leave empty. Other powers will not hesitate 1 second to advocate their own model to shape the 21st century world order. Personally, if you ask me, I do not share the fascination for new strong powers, the abandonment of freedom, and the illusion of nationalism. Therefore, distinguished members of the Congress, let us put them aside, write our own history, and birth the future we want. We have to shape our common answers to the global threats that we are facing. The only option then is to strengthen our cooperation. We can build the 21st century world order based on a new breed of multilateralism, based on a more effective, accountable, and results-oriented multilateralism, a strong multilateralism. This requires, more than ever, the United States' involvement, as your role was decisive for creating and safeguarding today's free world. The United States is the one who invented this multilateralism. You are the one now who has to help to preserve and reinvent it. This strong multilateralism will not outshine our national cultures and national identities. It is exactly the other way around. A strong multilateralism will allow our cultures and identities to be respected, to be protected, and to flourish freely together. Why? Because precisely our own cultures is based on both sides of the Atlantic, on this unique taste for freedom, on this unique attachment for liberty and peace. This strong multilateralism is the unique option compatible with our nations, our cultures, our identities. With the US President, with the support of every 535 members of this joint session, representing the whole American nation, we can actively contribute together to building the 21st century world order for our people. The United States and Europe have a historical role in this respect, because it is the only way to defend what we believe in, to promote our universal values, to express strongly that human rights, the rights of minorities, and shared liberty are the true answer to the disorders of the world. I believe in these rights and values. I believe that against ignorance, we have education. Against inequalities, development. Against cynicism, trust and good faith. Against fanaticism, culture. Against disease and epidemics, medicine. Against the threats on the planet, science. I believe in concrete action. I believe the solutions are in our hands. I believe in the liberation of the individual and in the freedom and responsibility of everyone to build their own lives and pursue happiness. I believe in the power of intelligently regulated market economies. We are experiencing the positive impact of our current economic globalization with innovations, with jobs creations. We see, however, the abuses of globalized capitalism and digital disruptions, which jeopardize the stability of our economies and democracies. I believe facing these challenges requires the opposite of massive deregulation and extreme nationalism. Commercial war is not the proper answer to these evolutions. We need a free and fair trade, for sure. A commercial war opposing allies is not consistent with our mission, with our history, with our current commitments for global security. At the end of the day, it will destroy jobs, increase prices, and the middle class will have to pay for it. I believe we can build the right answers to legitimate concerns regarding trade imbalances, excesses, and overcapacities by negotiating through the World Trade Organization and building cooperative solutions. We wrote these rules. We should follow them. I believe we can address our citizens' concerns regarding privacy and personal data. The recent Facebook's hearings highlighted the necessity to preserve our citizens' digital rights all over the world and protect their confidence in today's digital tools of life. The European Union passed a new regulation for data protection. I believe the United States and the European Union should cooperate to find the right balance between innovation and ethics and harness the best of today's revolutions in digital data and artificial intelligence. I believe facing inequalities should push us to improve policy coordination within the G20 to reduce financial speculation and create mechanisms to protect the middle class interests. Because our middle classes are the backbone of our democracies. I believe in building a better future for our children, which requires offering them a planet that is still habitable in 25 years. Some people think that securing current industries and their jobs is more urgent than transforming our economies to meet the global challenge of climate change. I hear these concerns, but we must find a smooth transition to a low-carbon economy. Because what is the meaning of our life, really, if we work and live destroying the planet while sacrificing the future of our children? What is the meaning of our life if our decision, our conscious decision, is to reduce the opportunities for our children or grandchildren? By polluting the oceans, not mitigating CO2 emissions, and destroying our biodiversity, we are killing our planet. Let us face it. There is no planet B. On this issue, it may happen we have disagreements between the United States and France. It may happen, like in all families. But that's, for me, a short-term disagreement. On the long run, we will have to face the same realities, and we're just citizens of the same planet. So we will have to face it. So beyond some short-term disagreements, we have to work together with business leaders and local communities. Let us work together in order to make our planet great again and create new jobs and new opportunities while safeguarding our Earth. And I'm sure one day the United States will come back and join the Paris Agreement. And I'm sure we can work together to fulfill with you the ambitions of the Global Compact on the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe in democracy. Many of our forebears were slain for the cause of freedom and human rights. With the great inheritance they gave us comes the responsibility to continue their mission in this new century and to preserve the perennial values handed to us and assure that today's unprecedented innovations in science and technology remain in the service of liberty and in the preservation of our planet for the next generations. To protect our democracies, we have to fight against the ever-growing virus of fake news, which exposes our people to irrational fear and imaginary risks. And let me attribute the fair copyright for this expression, fake news, especially here. Without reason, without truth, there is no real democracy, because democracy is about true choices and rational decisions. The corruption of information is an attempt to corrode the very spirit of our democracies. We also have to fight against the terrorist propaganda that spreads out its fanaticism on the internet. It has a gripping influence on some of our citizens and children. I want this fight to be part of our bilateral commitment, and we discussed with your president the importance of such an agenda. I want this fight to be part of the J7 agenda because, here again, it deeply harms our rights and shared values. The terrorist threat is even more dangerous when it is combined with the nuclear proliferation threat. We must therefore be stricter than ever with countries seeking to acquire the nuclear bomb. That is why France supports fully the United States in its efforts to bring Pyongyang through sanctions and negotiations towards denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. As for Iran, our objective is clear. Iran shall never possess any nuclear weapons. Not now, not in 5 years, not in 10 years, never. But this policy should should never lead us to war in the Middle East. We must ensure stability and respect sovereignty of the nations, including that one of Iran, which represents a great civilization. Let us not replicate past mistakes in the region. Let us not be naive on one side. Let us not create new wars ourselves on the other side. There is an existing framework called the JCPOA to control the nuclear activity of Iran. We signed it at the initiative of the United States. We signed it, both the United States and France. That is why we cannot say we should get rid of it like that. But it is true to say that this agreement may not address all concerns, and very important concerns. This is true. But we should not abandon it without having something substantial and more substantial instead. That's my position. That's why France will not leave the JCPOA, because we signed it. Your president and your country will have to take in the current days and weeks its own responsibilities regarding this issue. But what I want to do, and what we decided together with your president, is that we can work on a more comprehensive deal addressing all this concern. That is why we have to work on this more comprehensive deal based, as discussed with President Trump yesterday, on 4 pillars. The substance of the existing agreement, especially if you decide to leave it. The post-2025 period, in order to be sure that we will never have any nuclear activity for Iran. The containment of the military influence of the Iranian regime in the region, and the monitoring of ballistic activity. I think these 4 pillars, the one I addressed in front of the General Assembly of the United Nations last September, are the one which cover the legitimate fears of the United States and our allies in the region. I think we have to start working now on these 4 pillars to build this new comprehensive deal, and to be sure that whatever the decision of the United States will be, we will not leave the floor to the absence of rule. We will not leave the floor to this conflict of powers in Middle East. We will not fuel ourselves in increasing tensions and potential war. That's my position, and I think we can work together to build this comprehensive deal for the whole region, for our people, because I think it fairly addresses our concerns. That's my position. Thank you, President. And this containment, I mentioned in one of these pillars, is necessary in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Iraq, and also in Syria. Building a sustainable peace in a united and inclusive Syria requires, indeed, that all powers in the region respect the sovereignty of its people and the diversity of its communities. In Syria, we work very closely together. After prohibited weapons were used against the population by the regime of Bashar al-Assad 2 weeks ago, the United States and France, together with the United Kingdom, acted to destroy chemical facilities and to restore the credibility of the international community. This action was one of the best evidence of this strong multilateralism. And I want to pay special tribute for our soldiers because they did a very great job in this region and in this occasion. Beyond this action, we will together work for humanitarian solution on the short term, on the ground, and contribute actively to a lasting political solution to put an end to this tragic conflict. And I think one of the very important decisions we took together with President Trump was precisely to include Syria in this large framework for the overall region and to decide to work together on this political deal for Syria, for Syrian people, even after our war against ISIS. In the Sahel, where terrorist networks span a footprint as large as Europe, French and American soldiers are confronting the same enemy and risking their lives together. Here, I would like to pay special tribute to the American soldiers who fell this past fall in the region, and to their French comrades who lost their lives early this year in Mali. Better than anyone, I think, our troops know what the alliance and friendship between our country means. I believe facing all these challenges, all these fears, all this anger, our duty, our destiny is to work together and to build this new, strong multilateralism. Distinguished members of Congress, ladies and gentlemen, on April the 25th, 1960, General de Gaulle affirmed in this chamber that nothing was as important to France as the reason, the resolution, the friendship of the great people of the United States. 58 years later, to this very day, I come here to convey the warmest feelings of the French nation and to tell you that our people cherish the friendship of the American people with as much intensity as ever. The United States and the American people are an essential part of our confidence in the future, in democracy, in what women and men can accomplish in this world when we are driven by high ideals and an unbreakable trust in humanity and progress. Today, the call we hear is the call of history. This is a time of determination and courage. What we cherish is at stake. What we love is in danger. We have no choice
but to prevail. And together we shall prevail. Vive les États-Unis d'Amérique! Long live the friendship between France and the United States of America! Vive la République! Vive la France! Vive notre amitié! Merci. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys, so that is French President Emmanuel Macron's full speech to Congress this morning. Again, it was kind of cool to see that he noted he was doing so on the anniversary that French General Charles de Gaulle also did the same to the joint session of Congress in 1960. So kind of making some cool history there. This is his third day to his visit to the U.S., and he's wrapping it up with this speech to Congress. Last night was the lavish state dinner at the White House that we've been talking about, and today we'll wrap up his visit to the United States. So quite interesting to hear. I think the entirety of that speech, a lot of crowd reaction when he mentioned the Paris Climate Accord that he hopes the U.S. will get back involved in over the years, as well as making a little joke about the Plan B for a nuclear plan. And a few more sort of references that he made to what he's been talking about Iran with President Trump in the past few days. So pretty cool to see that, and that was his speech in full. Meanwhile, what's going on live right now? We're on the Senate floor where they are debating the Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State. He has. They're debating his confirmation. He's already been in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Last week we took that live as well. So let's jump into the Senate floor and see what they're saying about his potential confirmation.
This is an important time in our nation's history, and particularly around the world. I just heard the French president, chief executive, talk about the needs of Europe and his view on terrorism and America's place as a world leader. So now more than ever, we need a strong and qualified Secretary of State. We need a leader to negotiate with North Korea. These negotiations are coming up rapidly, and we know that Mike Pompeo has already developed a relationship. We need him to counter the Russian aggression that we see cropping up in other areas all around this globe. We need a strong leader to address the chemical weapons situation in Syria, as tragic as it is. And the list could go on. And you know what? Mike Pompeo is up for this job, and we should give it to him. We should give it to him in this chamber by confirmation. The American people want Washington to work. They want us to work together. They want us to work as a team. That's how we're set up. So how can that happen if the president can't even get the opportunity to put his own team in place? Well, I'm going to vote for Mike Pompeo to be our next Secretary of State because I want the president to have his team. I want this nation to have a strong leader. I want our State Department to be functioning as fully and as vibrantly and as aggressively as we can around the world in these dangerous times. So with that, Mr. President, I would urge my colleagues to put partisanship aside and confirm Mike Pompeo as our next Secretary of State. Mr. President, I yield back. And I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
appreciated. Mr. President, I rise today to join you and others who have on the floor, hoping we move this week to support the confirmation of Mike Pompeo, who's been nominated to be the Secretary of State at a critically important time for the country. We heard this morning in the joint session from President France the importance of our country and those who agree with our defense of freedom and security to stand up to that. There are threats all over the globe, but certainly everybody realizes that Mike Pompeo, the current director of the CIA, would have the knowledge he needs to do the job. He clearly has the experience he needs to do the job, and he has the support of the president who he would be representing. Historically, this body, until recent years, always dealt with foreign policy as if we were sure that bipartisanship starts at the water's edge, partisanship ends at the water's edge. That long tradition was always evidenced, particularly in the Secretary of State's job, of confirming people to important positions that relate to our national security. John Kerry was confirmed as Secretary of State by a vote of 94-3. Hillary Clinton was confirmed by a vote of 94-2. Condoleezza Rice received 85 votes when she was confirmed, and Colin Powell was confirmed unanimously. That's the tradition that the country has always set for this job. My colleague from New York, Senator Schumer, said in 2013, who in America, this is an exact quote, who in America doesn't think a president, Democrat or Republican, deserves his or her picks for who should run these agencies? Nobody is the rest of that quote. That's the answer to his own question. Apparently, that's no longer the answer to that question on the part of Senator Schumer and others. Senator Kerry, later Secretary of State Kerry, said in 2009, it's essential that we provide the president with the tools and resources he needs to effect change. That starts by making sure he has the national security team he's chosen in place as soon as possible. Secretary Kerry, Secretary Clinton were not confirmed because Republicans agreed with every single one of their policy positions. They weren't confirmed because their colleagues in the Senate agreed with every one of their votes. They were confirmed because they were qualified to do the job. And the president who had nominated them deserved to have his team in place to carry out the policies that he had been elected to carry out. Now, the same standard should be extended to Director Pompeo. He's eminently qualified for the job. He graduated first in his class at the United States Military Academy at West Point. In 1986, he served as a cavalry officer patrolling the Iron Curtain before the fall of the Berlin Wall. After active duty, Director Pompeo graduated from Harvard Law School, where he edited the Law Review. This is a man of great accomplishment before he entered politics, because in addition to those things, he also ran 2 successful businesses before he was elected to the House of Representatives in 2010. He served in the House from 2010 to 2017. He was a member of the Intelligence Committee. In that role, he was at the forefront of information that is important to national security, ranging from the Iran nuclear accord to the Patriot Act. He understands these issues. He is a person of significant capacity. And again, maybe most importantly of all the qualifications, he was picked by the President of the United States, who after this time working together with Director Pompeo as the director of the CIA, the President should know exactly what he's getting. And frankly, we should too. President Trump decided to not only nominate Director Pompeo to be the Director of National Security, but when he was sworn in, when he was confirmed before he was sworn in, 60 to 32 was the vote. 14 Senate Democrats, most of them still here, if not all, they may all still be here, voted for Mike Pompeo to be the director of the CIA. I would say he's more qualified today to be Secretary of State than he was then to be the director of the CIA, because not only has he done everything he'd done up till then, but he has understood from the unique perspective of the director of the CIA the foreign policy and the intelligence challenges we face every day. He's taken the responsibilities seriously. He's briefed the president over and over again, and the president knows exactly what he's getting, and Director Pompeo should know exactly who he's working for. Given the numerous challenges we face here and that we face around the globe, it's important that we swiftly confirm not just Mike Pompeo, but the president's nominees. Many of these positions still remain vacant because our colleagues across the aisle have frankly wasted hours and days obstructing the confirmation process. It's way beyond any normal way this has been approached. We're right now in the middle of a 30-hour debate. I don't see that many people debating. We had a big debate yesterday, at least time reserved at the assistance of the minority, and I think the debate was about 28 minutes out of the 20 hours between the time the nominee could have been voted on and would have gotten the same number of votes that they got almost 20 hours later after 28 minutes of debate, Mr. President. President Trump's nominees have faced 88 cloture votes. That's the time we're in now where you have a cloture vote, then you have this long period of time for theoretical debate that doesn't occur, have faced 28 cloture votes compared to 24 total cloture votes in the first entire 2 years of the 6 previous presidents combined. So an average of 4 cloture votes for those presidents in their first 2 years. President Trump's had 88 cloture votes in less than a year and a half. Something is happening differently than's ever happened before. It takes an average of 85 days for the president's nominees to be confirmed once they get to the Senate. 20 days longer than President Obama's nominees, but the other difference with President Obama's nominees is we didn't stop all the work in the Senate during the 60 days that we're having hearings, getting the nomination ready to the floor. You didn't do exactly what we're doing right now, which says we're going to fully take advantage of every right the minority has to insist on debate. The only thing missing in that debate is the debate. So at the rate we're going, it would take more than 9 years to confirm all of the president's nominees. This would be 9 years of his 4-year term. This would be longer than the president would have if he didn't nominate anybody else. This would be longer than the president would have if he was elected to 2 terms. It is unacceptable. It's ridiculous. It denies the president the counsel he needs of senior leaders, but it also denies the Senate the floor time it needs to deal with the issues. You know, if you've watched the Senate the last several years, and particularly if you watch it the last several months, the quorum call that we so often have, the one that I suggested we remove ourselves from, is what you see when you turn on the Senate, because we're waiting for a vote to happen, the debate of which does not occur. So later today, the Rules Committee that I chair will be considering Senator Lankford's legislation to address these delays in the confirmation process. All Senator Lankford's resolution does is to make permanent the same rules that Senate Democrats agreed to in 2013 when they were in the majority. And while they were in the majority, a majority of Republicans and Democrats all agreed that we would confirm President Obama's nominees with debate that more nearly met the likely debate for that office. Senator Lankford's resolution would simply reduce debate for most executive branch offices from 30 hours down to 8 hours, and from district judges from 30 hours to 2 hours. And by the way, we don't have to use those 2 hours or those 8 hours either. If there's no debate, we should always move to the vote, but at least the debate still has, the time still gives the minority the protection that traditionally they have had. But when you abuse the minority protections in the Senate, that's when those protections tend to go away. The resolution still would have 30 hours of debate for the Supreme Court, for circuit courts, that court of appeal from all the district courts, and for cabinet level nominees. We're not opposed to debating nominees that really get debated. I think the opposition here is we're opposed to not debating and using up time simply as a delay tactic where the result would be the same whether you voted in 30 minutes or 30 hours. Now remember, this is the same framework the Senate passed by a vote of 78 to 16 in 2013. 52 Democrats voted in favor of this exact same resolution in 2013, including the current minority leader. Senator Lankford's proposal would make that framework permanent. It would allow the Senate to expedite the confirmation process for the president's well-qualified nominees. It would also allow the Senate to get to the other work that the American people expect the Senate to do and have every reason to expect the Senate to do. And so today and tomorrow, we'll continue this process of waiting for the vote on the nominee to be Secretary of State. Again, a vote that prior to recent times would have occurred right after the report was out and members knew what they were going to do. And so hopefully we'll begin to look at these rules and our work more seriously. Mr. President, also, as I close out quickly, I want to pay tribute to Ted Vandermeed, a longtime House of Representatives leadership staff member who died of pancreatic cancer on March the 19th. For the 10 years before Ted left the Congress, I worked with him every day the Congress was in session. He was a great public servant, and I'd ask that my remarks be included in the record.
Without objection.
All right, guys, a great way to sort of roll out the stream today from the newsroom here at Fox 5. Thanks for joining us, and we're glad that we were able to bring that speech to you in its entirety, the one from President Macron, which you guys are commenting on. And thanks for commenting on our live chat and being part of the conversation. It's nice to hear different opinions from all over the world, especially those of you who are watching in France, some of you across the nation. Of course, here we like to cover everything from the DMV area, so hyper-local, to more national, to, of course, international news as well. This was a good breaking point for the Senate. The Senate will be debating the confirmation of Mike Pompeo, like he mentioned, over the next couple of days. And we'll have a lot of that on our live stream for you guys to check into live from the Senate floor throughout the week. So everybody have a great Wednesday. We're going to roll down with a stream today. Iran, Schultz, Le Baron. Everybody else who's on, have a great one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.